are in listen-only mode.
So we are gathered here for an emergency meeting of the State Board of Elections. We have one member that we know will not be here with us today. And Mr. Severin Miller is traveling and he is on an airplane at this time. But we do have four. The other four members of the board are here, which constitutes a quorum. So we do have a quorum present, and we call the meeting to order. And I'm wondering if there's any additions to the agenda. I don't believe there were any, but are there any additions to the agenda?
No.
Okay, so we have a very focused emergency meeting today. We have a regular meeting, I believe, next week. So we will be focused on just a few items, including some polling place changes that were coming emergent and three pieces of COMAR that are emergency changes to regulations. And then there will be an emergency closed session. We will do all of the business prior to the closed session, and we will not return unless is there any reason to return after the closed session? I don't know. I'm not sure the business in the closed session today.
No, I don't believe so. There won't
Okay.
be.
Great. So then we will close the session at that time. So we will move immediately to our third item on the agenda, which is approval of proposed emergency changes to regulations of COMAR. And the first one is 33.07.04 election day activities. Who will be taking that?
Melissa will.
As soon as she unmutes herself. Hi, this
Sorry.
is me. Go ahead.
Melissa's going to handle the first one and I'll do the other two.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Melissa. Go ahead.
So this proposed regulation that provides an exception to a ban on the use of cell phones in the polling place. Generally, they are banned. Here recently, Maryland has adopted digital ID. And so this regulation would provide an exception to the ban on cell phone usage to provide ID or proof of residency using the cell phone.
Okay. Any of the board members have questions about this proposed regulation? So my question would be, Melissa, are we proposing this as both emergent and permanent regulatory change?
Yes.
Okay. Based on that, does the board have any questions about the proposed regulation to cell phone usage?
Just
Yes.
one, Bill, because we only have this in front of us to make the change. I just want to confirm what thing is my understanding, and I think the law, which is there's no use of a cell phone while voting. I mean, the purpose of this is to allow a voter to present identification as necessary. And then the expectation would be there's no further use of the cell phone by a voter during the voting process or in the polling location. Is that correct?
Yes, the exception is only to provide lawful ID or proof of residency. And logistically, that should take place either at SDR at a separate table when you check in, as opposed to farther along in the voting process when you're actually voting your ballot.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that the record that we're working off of here, that there's still public awareness of what the restriction is related to cell phones, given that we're making a change to allow them and potentially be used for ID purposes. So, okay, thank you.
Sure.
Are there any further questions? Thank you very much. Any further questions? There's no questions. The board would entertain a motion to propose to accept as both emergent and permanent regulations, go through the process for both, Title 33.07.04.
So moved.
So we can count one of them as a motion, one as a second. So all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Approved unanimously. So we move on to the next piece of legislation, and pardon me for going slow. I was unable to print anything because I am on vacation. So we're moving on to absentee ballots, which is 33.11.03 and .05. I think Nikki, you said that
Yes.
you take care of that?
Yes. So I'll sort of do the three of them together, right? So two are proposed changes to the absentee chapter and one is to the provisional chapter. I'm going to do them by subject. I think that might be easier. So
Okay.
the first proposed change is to 3311.0306. So this is what we would be calling the curing, right? This is the proposed changes to the regulation about what the local boards do when a mail-in ballot is returned unsigned. And as you recall, I had distributed some regulations before the last meeting. And then the governor vetoed the bill that these changes were based on. And so we withdrew them from consideration, but presenting them back now as a way to mirror the existing regulations with the bill that was vetoed. The state board has that authority. You have already adopted regulations regarding curing, and this is just making the existing regulations mirror the House and Senate bill from the 2022 session. So the language is just to make it be consistent with the law, or with the vetoed law, the vetoed bill, and saying that the local boards within 3 days contact the voter. And also a new change from what I would have presented last month is how the voter provides their signature. And so have it defined as by email, which would be signing, scanning, and sending it in person, and any other means offered by the state board, because we are looking to maybe pilot a way to use a solution that allows the voter to return their signature by text. There's software out there used in many states that does this, and we're looking to pilot that and wanted to make sure that that whatever was in regulations was brought in to allow us to try to use that. So if I could present that one alone and then do the multiple ballots from the same voter as separate, that's a change to absentee section and a change to provisional.
Okay, so this one, first proposal strictly had to do with 33.11.0306. Did I say
Correct.
that correctly? Okay. So is there any questions from the board about 33.11.03.06, the return of the ballot, having to do with curing? Any questions from the board on that?
Mr. Chair, if there are no questions, I move that we approve Title 33.11.03.06 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in
Could I just do a point of
Yeah.
clarification that the question you asked Melissa, the same answer applies to these. We'd like to present these as both emergency as well as the normal process.
Permanent, okay.
Right.
That will be
So-
included in my motion.
Okay, is that same second still stand to that? There's been a motion that for both emergent and permanently, 33, pardon me, I'm going around my screen, I don't have anything printed, 33.11.03.06 has been moved for both permanent and
Emergency.
emergent. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. So we have a unanimous vote. So we move on to the item on our agenda for the other topic, because you're doing these by topic. So I'll let you go ahead, Nikki.
Okay, great. So you have another sheet that's proposed changes to 33.16. I'm sorry, not at the top of my page, 33.11.05.04 and 33.16.06.04. So those are both on the same piece of paper. And
Mhm.
these two changes are addressing what happens when a voter returns two ballots, provisional and absentee. So voter returns an absentee and also a provisional. And so this was also a part of the bill that the governor vetoed. And the proposed language before you is reverting us back to what we did as an emergency in 2020 for the general election. And so if you receive, it's the same change in both. If a local board gets an absentee and a provisional, or a mail-in ballot and a provisional from the same voter, they are to count the mail-in ballot. So that's the way it's written. I don't know, Justin, you had asked a question earlier today. If you want to modify these in any way, that's fine. But I'm just presenting what you all have, and then we can discuss it. Then instead of redoing both ballots, the local boards would be counting the mail-in ballot.
Now, these both emergency and permanent as well, Nikki?
Yes, please.
So, Justin, did you have any questions on that? I know I saw that there was an email. I couldn't really read it again because I'm away. So, did you have any questions around that?
Right. So the question that I raised in the email, which I'll repeat, and maybe Ms. Charleston can talk us through, is what would happen in the event, which may be rare, if the absentee ballot is in the mail and doesn't arrive until after someone submits the provisional ballot. But my ignorance with the local board voting process is, would it be possible for the board to count someone's provisional vote first before getting to the absentee ballot? And then would it be possible to even, quote unquote, uncount the provisional ballot? And if that would not be possible, which I don't think it would be, then could we have a separate provision, like exception to this language we have here? It says in the event board receives an absentee ballot after the provisional is counted, then you would strike or not count the absentee ballot, just to catch that one scenario.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. I think one we spoke about before when we had these temporary regulations. Is there thoughts from the staff on that? Nikki, do you have any thoughts on that? Because it doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen
Awesome.
because what will happen is that I think provisional account is on the Tuesday of the week following. So, and then you have one more absentee or mail-in count, which would be the Thursday. So it would be possible to count them in the provisional, not receive the mail of the mail-in until after the provisional and have already counted a provisional ballot. So should there be something in regulation saying in the event that happens, then the provisional counts and you cast out the mail-in ballot?
And that's what the local boards would do. So there's no objection from us to add that exception in to make it clear, because as Justin, you said, you can't uncount a ballot once it's been counted. So that provisional would be counted and would have to stay counted, because we can't find that voter's ballot once it's been counted. So the exception, which is what the local boards would have done in 2020 anyway, is just to reject then that absentee ballot that had not yet been received.
The principle is that first in, that's what gets counted. And we just have to make it known that that's the situation in case there is a glitch there.
Would it be prudent to put that in COMAR, or do you think that is not necessary?
I don't think it's necessary, but I don't think it hurts anything. Justin proposed a D. Proposed a revision to C as except as provided in subsection D, and proposed a new subsection D, which makes clear that if the provisional's already been counted, that the absentee, we're writing regs, so the absentee with the mail-in ballot would be rejected.
All right, I would be in favor of that. Sky, do you have a?
I'm fine with the proposed change to C and the addition of D as Justin had presented it, and what we were able to review. It makes sense.
So that was for then the absentee ballot. Then I guess we need a parallel change to the provisional voting regulation.
I don't know that we would need to change the provisional. But I agree, we need it for the absentee chapter subtitle.
If I could chime in, and this is a very small nit, and I'll double check while you all discuss, but I think A, B, C, and D are subsections, not sections. So it might want to be except as provided in subsection D, not section D. Very small, but I think that's how it's categorized. I'll double check while you all discuss.
Okay, and I'll let you look at it before we submit it for publication.
So for today, can we do this? Do we need to actually craft it so that we can approve that today? Do you have that wording? Did Justin, again, unfortunately, I'm away on vacation, so I couldn't really print and look at things and digest it. Do we have that in writing so that we can take a motion on it and approve it as worded today?
Yes, he wrote it. I have it in red and printed
Okay.
it under various subsections.
Is that ready to go? Nikki, have you looked at that? So is that ready to go as is? Can we take a motion based on how that is written? Great. So since Justin put it in, Justin, is that your motion with your changes?
Are you need to amend or make a motion to amend or adopt the regulation per my amendment with the exception for the local board to count the provisional ballot if it is received and counted prior to the absentee ballot being received?
Great. Is there a second?
Second,
All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Unanimous. Except for Malcolm used the
Thank you.
Spock. He used the Spock. Thank you. Okay, let me open back up to my agenda. Were there any further regulations that we needed to consider?
Well, I guess, well, for completeness, I can rest more easily. So then, I know, Nikki, you mentioned that we don't pay for the provisional voting regulation. Can you talk me through why the exception wouldn't be needed for that one?
Because the provisional chapter just is addressing provisional voting, and we say you would, let me, hold on. I closed it, let me pull it up again.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I think we're saying that, oh, okay. Yeah, I guess we do. We'd have to do B1 and then accept as provided in subsection 2 or section, I think this would be a subsection, but I'll check that too. And then the same language there too.
Great question, Justin. Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll do the same thing in both sections for clarity.
We
So-
will need a motion, and this is both for temporary and emergent.
Yeah.
Justin, again, I think this should be your motion, your catch, are you good with the
Sure, yeah.
Is there a second?
Sure, I'd move to enact or adopt the regulation for provisional voting 33.16.06.04 with my proposed amendment providing the option that when the provisional ballot is counted prior to the absentee ballot being received and counted by the board, that the provisional ballot is what is counted, and then the local board should reject the absentee.
Is there a second to that motion?
second,
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Oh, we have a unanimous vote. So I believe that's all the regulations now. Let me go back to the agenda. That completes A, B, and C of number 3 of our agenda. So let's move on to the approval of emergency polling place changes. I believe we have first is Baltimore City, who will be providing that information from staff.
Hi, this is Donna Duncan.
Hello, Donna.
And I'm going to just briefly summarize. You have the three counties that have asked for emergency polling place changes. You have the letters, the explanations of each, and if you have questions about any specific ones, we should have the election director for those counties on the line, so don't hesitate to ask. But in summary, in Baltimore City, we have two buildings that were vandalized. And so we have District 20-007 and 20-008 moving to the Hilton Rec Center. It's about 0.06 miles away. All the signage will be put up as needed at both places. And then we have like District 15-018 and 16-05 moving to the Harlem Rec Center.
Okay, so let me ask it like this. Does any board member have any specific questions about the three
Right.
municipalities? So we have Baltimore City, Prince George's County, and St. Mary's County. I believe it would be appropriate, if there are no individual questions, to do this in one motion for all three jurisdictions. Does any board member have any problems or questions about any of the specific moves?
I have a general question.
Yep.
I guess, yeah, we can handle it now. Do the local boards vote on these as well before this comes to us?
Yes. Yes, they do. And each one should say in there that the local board did approve it.
Okay, it wasn't for the Baltimore City one, which is just closer to home as a city resident. But if it has to be, and if it was indeed reviewed, if each was reviewed and approved by the local board, then I'm more comfortable going forward without overly scrutinizing it.
I believe how how this works is that if we only come to us with changes within a certain period of time before an election. So before that, they're able to do their own regular polling places. Isn't that correct?
13 weeks before an election,
Right.
they have free will to move the polling places as well as they decide.
Right.
And after that is when they bring them to us.
Right. Okay, great. Are there any other questions?
Justin, if I don't know whether Armstead or Abigail are on the line, if you want additional information.
Yeah, I guess I would like to be able to confirm it. So if you're able, or someone is able to confirm that the city board members formally did approve it. Just wanted to double check because the letter didn't reference when or if they approved it. And just since it's a last minute change, I'd like to feel comfortable that it was reviewed and scrutinized by the local board if possible.
Is that possible? Is Armstead with us?
Donna, do you see him? I don't see him in the list.
I don't see him either.
No, I'm sorry, I don't. I can,
I think that would be helpful as a, to make sure when we have these requests in the future that the letters would indicate that the local LBEs have already voted and approved to remove that question.
I mean, if it is in the practice that it wouldn't come to our level until local board members have reviewed and voted of it, I'm comfortable. I guess, yeah, for the future, so I don't want to hold the process here and no one else is obviously raising action. I guess it'd be good to feel
and
comfortable.
Abigail is calling you right now, apparently. Or calling Armstead. She just texted me. So she's okay.
So while we're on the topic, I think so that if we're going to deal with all three of these, that the St. Mary's Board of Election letter
Mhm.
does advise that LBE had an emergency board meeting, discussed the situation, and came to a conclusion about a new site. And that's all well presented in the St. Mary's letter. I can understand the inquiry here because the Baltimore City letter tells us that the facilities were vandalized, but there's nothing regarding the deliberative process that went into a decision by the actual board. So I get it. I get it where you're coming from, Justin.
Yeah, I do too. And I also don't see that listed in the Prince George's County letter. And again, they probably did follow that, but there's nothing to indicate that it was.
David, do you see Armstead on the call?
No, I do not.
He's saying he's on the call, but he can't talk. So what would you like me to tell him?
I think
Sorry, you're breaking up.
the question that Justin had was just to verify that the LBE has voted for these changes in advance of presenting it to the state board.
All right, let me see if I can get that from him via text.
And while she's doing that, is there anybody from PG County, from Prince, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that, from Prince George's County that can verify that as well?
David, do you see Alicia?
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. In the previous board meeting, recognizing that there would be many last-minute changes based on history, the board did give me the appointing authority, the authority to make necessary changes, and we did notify the board chair and the members.
Okay. Thank you very much for that answer. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We have that verification. Yep. Nikki is just saying she needs another moment. So to clarify what Alicia just said from Prince George's County is that the board gave her appointing authority on that to present to the board. So that would have gone through a process. We see from the St. Mary's County that they had an emergency meeting of the board, and we're waiting for the answer from Baltimore City right now.
Right. I mean, and that makes sense to me. I guess the distinction for the city one is that the reference to the building being vandalized. So just wanted, if it hadn't been fully vetted, I guess the question might be, well, what level of vandalism or that would make the voting place or the polling place non-functional.
It has to be moved, right? Nikki, you.
Yeah, so I spoke with Armstead. His board has not approved it. So could we perhaps have you all approve it pending their board's approval of it? And then he will obtain their board. They had a meeting they had to cancel last week, so they couldn't get it approved by them. But could we perhaps do it additional?
Yeah. So what I'd like to do is handle this in two different motions, since we have information that Prince George's County the director was given appointing authority in this by the board with the board's knowledge and notification. And St. Mary's County has indicated in its letter, maybe we do one motion first to approve Prince George's and St. Mary's County's polling place changes. And then we'll deal with a separate motion for Baltimore City, if that's okay. So can I have a motion for Prince George's and St. Mary's to approve the polling places as presented?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your hands. It's unanimous. So now for Baltimore City, I believe that our motion would need to be conditional on the local board's approval to make our approval fully vetted. So can I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Thank you. So that has passed unanimously as well. And if I could just point out as we deal with any of these emergent situations going forward, that maybe if the staff could let the LBEs know that when they come forward with that information, if we could know the status already of approval by the LBE, that would make things a little smoother. Thank you.
And I detailed it, I think, in last election director meeting, but it had, the Baltimore City letter had already come to us.
Sure. It's not like you guys don't have 7,000 things happening at one time right now with an election coming.
Thank you.
I appreciate everything that everyone is doing. I know before the call, we were talking about how many moving parts there are. And it's amazing however it shows the quality of all of the election professionals, how the election is pulled off. So we really appreciate that. So I believe we're done with item 4 and we're moving to the closed session. And let me say
Mr.
again-
Chairman,
Yes,
if I could, before you move into closed session.
yes, please.
I'm going to put him on the spot, but we have a new Assistant Attorney General, and I would like to introduce him to you. His name is Dan Cobran, and I think he started on Wednesday? There he is,
It was Tuesday.
Tuesday. So day 3. So we had a few minute chat with him yesterday. Super happy that you could join us today. And so just wanted to introduce him to everybody. This is our board and this is Dan.
It's a pleasure to meet you. We look forward to working with you and you have some big shoes to fill. So, but I'm sure you'll do a great job.
So I've heard it's an honor. It's an honor to be selected to work for the board.
You may not think that after you've been here a while, with the issues coming up. But we welcome you.
Thank you.
Is there any other business before I move to closed session? So I will say again that we will not be coming back to close the open session. This will conclude the business of the open session. This was an emergency meeting. It was focused on those items we've already dealt with. There will be another meeting next week. I believe that agenda will be
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I guess,
No, please.
I guess depending on our discussion regarding litigation, I'm wondering if we would need to come back into an open session to make some sort of action to authorize litigation. I don't know the answer to that. So I'm just thinking through if we would have to come back to an open session to say we make some decision about how to proceed.
So great point. Just before you had joined the call, I asked that prior, and Nikki did not believe we needed to come back into open session. Is that still your belief, Nikki?
That was my thought, but I guess if you all have a different thought,
I'm just asking the question. I wouldn't necessarily think so, but yeah, I'm just asking the question, leaving the ability open before we formally say we're not coming back.
Could we address it next week if we had to? Since we're meeting next week?
Well, I guess, if we do proceed with litigation, that would allow the early canvas as early as, I guess, 8 days for early voting, that would be a pretty quick turnaround. If it didn't start until next week, if we had to give the blessing to go forward in an open meeting, I don't know the timing of how it would take to file a petition with the court and get an order. I guess whatever date we would need it by, or as soon as possible.
So my question would be, without violating anything for our closed meeting, to ask Nikki, is that the topic of discussion in our closed meeting?
It is about pending and potential litigation.
Okay. Do you see a need that we may need to come back into open meeting based on that? Should we keep the meeting open?
I think it does not need to stay open.
Okay. Great. Then I will continue with my thought. And Justin, thank you for that very good question. Nikki, thank you for that careful answer. That we will close the meeting. We will not come back into open session. We will be moving into closed session. And I will now, the board will now consider whether to meet in closed session to consult with counsel, to obtain legal advice and obtain information from staff about pending or potential litigation as permitted by section 3-305 subsection B, 7 and 8 of the general provision article. Meeting in closed session will allow the board of the members of the board to seek and obtain legal advice with board counsel without waiver of attorney-client privilege and obtain information from staff about pending or potential litigation. May I have a motion to meet in closed session?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. We're unanimous to move into closed session. The motion having passed, the board will now meet in closed session in accordance with extension B, 7 and 8 of section 3-305 of the Open Meetings Act. And again, we will not be coming back. This will close our open session today, and we will see you next week, because we do have a meeting next week. We thank you, and let's see, we meet in closed session. How about it? Is 2:45 too early?
It's fine.
We'll meet at 2:45 in closed.